I woke up because I couldn't breathe. Not in a panic, there was no sudden gasp, no choking feeling. Just, wait. Something heavy pressing down on my chest, holding me still, pinning me to the mattress with a quiet intensity one couldn't explain. I opened my eyes. Max was staring down at me. My 70-pound Labrador mix stood with all four paws awkwardly planted on my ribcage, his face inches from mine, his eyes wide and searching. His body trembled slightly. It was 4:27 a.m. "Max?" I whispered. He didn't move. Didn't lick my face. Didn't wag his tail. Didn't even blink. He just stayed frozen there, his warm breath puffing out across my cheek. And even though it was absurd, my dog crawling on top of me in the middle of the night, I couldn't bring myself to laugh. Something about the moment felt important. Urgent. Wrong. Max had always been a sweet dog. Quiet, gentle, never the type to jump on furniture or bark without reason. I'd adopted him 8 months ago after a trip to the shelter on a whim, a just-to-look kind of visit that turned into an instant connection. He was older than most of the others, already 5 when I met him. Calm. Watchful. Like he'd seen enough chaos to know how to avoid it. And he never climbed on the bed. Not once. I slowly sat up, forcing him to shift off of me. He stepped down reluctantly and stood at my side, body tense. The house was silent, but my ears rang. I could feel my pulse thudding in my throat. Was it a nightmare? Sleep paralysis? I looked at Max again. He was facing the door now. Completely still. Every hair on his back raised. I got out of bed and crept toward the hallway. Max followed at my heel, his body brushing mine with every cautious step. The hardwood floor creaked beneath us. Everything looked the same, the hallway, the living room, the kitchen. No lights on. No windows open. But something felt off. It was like the air was heavier. I checked every door and window. Nothing had been opened. Except the back door latch wasn't fully set. I always lock it at night. Did I forget? Or did something, or someone, try to open it? I stood there for several seconds, staring at the lock. My heart pounded harder than it had in years. Max let out a low sound behind me, a breath, almost a whimper. I locked the door again. Double-checked every entry point. Closed all the curtains. Then I returned to bed. Max didn't leave my side. He curled up right beside me on the floor and stared at the bedroom door for the rest of the night. In the morning, I tried to laugh it off. Tried to tell myself I'd been dreaming. That the door latch must have just slipped. That Max was just being weird. Dogs do that sometimes. But he followed me everywhere that day. And I mean everywhere. If I went to the bathroom, he pawed at the door until I opened it again. If I stepped into the kitchen, he was there, pressed against the cabinets. If I walked toward the front door to grab the mail, he stood directly in my path. Blocking me. His eyes never left mine. I tried to take him on a walk, thinking maybe he was just restless. But Max was alert the entire time, ears twitching, head snapping to every sound in the distance. He walked so close I nearly tripped over him twice. And when a neighbor's car backfired down the street, he lunged in front of me like he thought I was under attack. "Max, what is going on with you?" I asked aloud. He just panted. Eyes scanning the tree line. That night, I fell asleep with the bedroom door shut and locked. Just in case. Max lay beside the bed, chin on the floor, unmoving. I must have drifted off sometime around midnight. And at 3:14 a.m., I woke up again. To the same weight. Max. Back on my chest. Back over me. Staring. He didn't bark. Didn't growl. But this time, I heard it too. A soft click. From somewhere downstairs. Max growled low in his throat. The sound sent ice through my veins. I grabbed my phone. 1 bar of service. No missed calls. No messages. Just darkness. I slipped out of bed slowly, grabbed the baseball bat from the closet, and crept into the hallway. Max stayed glued to my hip, moving silently with me like a second shadow. Down the stairs. Into the kitchen. Nothing. No open windows. No broken glass. But the back door again. It was unlocked. I hadn't touched it since the night before. I relocked the door, pulled down the curtain, and turned to Max. He was still staring at the door. Like he knew. Like he'd seen this before. I barely slept the rest of the night. And when morning finally came, I called the shelter. "Hi," I said. "I adopted a dog from you 8 months ago, Max. I was just wondering if you had any records on where he came from." There was a pause on the line. "We don't have much," the woman said. "He was dropped off anonymously. No microchip. No ID. Just a note saying, 'Can't keep him. Please take care of him.'" My stomach twisted. "Did he ever act protective, Max?" She sounded surprised. "He was sweet, but guarded. Always alert. One of the volunteers joked he was like a retired soldier, always watching the door." That afternoon, I sat on the floor beside Max. He leaned into me immediately, resting his head on my lap. "I think you're trying to protect me," I whispered. "I just wish I knew why." He didn't move. Didn't look up. Just stayed. Still. Solid. Present. Later that night, I left my bedroom door open. Just in case. And when I woke up again in the early hours, heart racing from a dream I couldn't remember, Max was already there. On my chest. Holding me down. And for the first time it didn't scare me. Because I finally understood. Max wasn't afraid of me being hurt. He was afraid of me not waking up at all. I'd never seen Max like that before. It wasn't just the odd behavior at night, crawling on top of me, growling at empty doors. It was everything. The way his eyes flicked to the corners of the room when nothing was there. The way he paced the hallway like a soldier on patrol. The way he flinched when the wind howled through the trees. He was alert. Too alert. And it was starting to rub off on me. I used to think our little cottage in the woods was peaceful. Quiet. Safe. But over the past few nights, the silence had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It was stifling, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something. Max wouldn't leave my side. Not for a second. And I was beginning to realize something. He wasn't trying to follow me. He was trying to guard me. That morning, I brewed coffee with trembling hands and opened the windows to let in some air. The forest outside was calm, bathed in golden sunlight. Birds chirped. The wind rustled leaves in the distance. Everything looked normal. But when I turned around, Max was standing at the door to the hallway, tail stiff, head low, a deep rumble vibrating in his chest. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared into the darkness of the hall like he was waiting for it to blink back. I grabbed my phone and called the vet again. "Hi. I don't know how to explain this. Max is acting strange. Protective. But beyond that, it's like he's trying to warn me about something." The receptionist paused. "He's not aggressive, is he?" "No," I said quickly. "Not toward me. Just tense." "Bring him in," she said. "Let's check his blood work. Maybe something neurological." That afternoon, I loaded Max into the car. He didn't want to go, actually resisted when I opened the back door, something he'd never done before. His body blocked mine subtly, like he thought stepping outside would put me in danger. "It's okay," I whispered, gently nudging him in. "We'll be right back." He obeyed, reluctantly. But he didn't take his eyes off the house until it vanished behind the trees. The vet ran every test she could think of. Blood. Reflexes. Heart rate. Eyes. Joints. All normal. Honestly, she said, scratching her head, he's in perfect shape for his age. Better than most dogs his size. But his cortisol is a little elevated. Cortisol? I asked. Stress hormone, she explained. Usually linked to trauma, anxiety, or sensing something's wrong. I blinked. Could it be me he's sensing? She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Dogs pick up on everything, emotional shifts, chemical changes, even subtle smells. If something's off with you, he'll know. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I kept thinking about what she'd said, cortisol. Sensing something's wrong. Was Max picking up on me? I hadn't been feeling great lately. Headaches. Fatigue. Brain fog that came and went in strange waves. I'd chalked it up to stress, poor sleep, too much screen time. But what if it was more than that? At 3:02 a.m., I woke again. Max was there. Not on top of me this time, but beside me, standing stiffly, ears pinned, teeth slightly bared. His tail was straight out, not wagging. He was staring into the hallway. And then came the noise. A soft click. Like a switch being flicked. Then another. Like footsteps, soft and steady, across the kitchen tile. My mouth went dry. I grabbed the flashlight and crept toward the door. Max growled low behind me, but didn't stop me. As I reached the top of the stairs, I held my breath. Light spilled faintly across the kitchen floor. The fridge light. The door was wide open. But I hadn't opened it. I walked down, heart pounding in my ears. The room was cold. Too cold. I shut the fridge, checked the back door again, still locked. Every window? Still closed. But the air felt stale. Heavier than it had before. And there was a strange smell in the air. Sour. Metallic. Unnatural. Max stepped beside me and sniffed the baseboards. Then he stopped, sat down, and began to whine softly. What is it? I whispered. He stared at a vent in the floor. The one behind the kitchen table. A vent I hadn't thought about in weeks. I dropped to my knees and lifted the grate. Nothing but darkness. Dust. A faint smell of rust. I reached for my phone and shined the flashlight down. The air duct stretched under the house, empty, as far as I could see. But Max wouldn't look away. He stayed there all night. The next day, I called a handyman. Told him I thought there might be mold in the vents, or something dead in the crawlspace. I didn't mention the fridge, the midnight sounds, the crawling on top of me. He arrived around noon with a toolbox and a wide grin. Max hated him instantly. Stood at the door growling, hackles up, like he was trying to stop me from letting him in. It's okay, I told Max, he's here to help. The man chuckled. Protective guy, huh? I nodded, but my chest was tight. I'll check the crawlspace first, he said. 10 minutes later, he called me outside. You're not gonna like this, he said, lifting the hatch under the house. There's standing water down here. Mold, too. And the insulation's basically rotted through. He paused, frowning. And that smell? That's gas. My heart stopped. Gas? He nodded grimly. Might be a slow leak in the old line. It's not strong yet, but give it another few weeks and this place could have made you real sick. Or worse. I backed away slowly. Max sat beside me, panting softly. He hadn't taken his eyes off the man the whole time. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, Max curled beside me, not tense, not anxious, just watching. And for the first time I realized. He hadn't just been guarding me. He'd been sensing it. The air. The smell. The danger. He knew. Long before I did. I thought he was crawling on top of me because he was anxious, because he was overattached. But now I understood. He was trying to keep me conscious. To wake me up. Because my body had been shutting down. Because I'd been falling deeper and deeper into that toxic sleep. Max had saved my life. And I hadn't seen it. Until now. The plumber confirmed what the handyman suspected: there had been a gas leak. Slow. Silent. Nearly undetectable without professional equipment. Carbon monoxide, they said. The kind that seeps into your blood and steals the oxygen from your brain. The kind that makes you tired, foggy, slow. The kind that kills you in your sleep, so gently you don't even wake up. I stared at the printed report in my hands, heart pounding in my ears. And all I could think was, Max knew. The repair team arrived the next day in heavy boots and matching jackets. They moved quickly, pulling up parts of the old piping beneath the floor, sealing connections, airing out the house with loud fans that blew cold air into every room. I sat outside on the porch steps, Max beside me like always. He watched the workers with cautious eyes, his tail still, his body calm now, not tense, not afraid. Almost as if he was saying, I told you. I reached out and scratched behind his ears. You saved me, I said quietly. He let out a soft breath and leaned against my leg. The headaches had already started to fade. The brain fog that I'd assumed was stress or burnout began lifting like a morning mist. My limbs felt lighter. My chest felt clearer. It was like someone had turned the oxygen back on in my life. And yet, it wasn't just relief I felt. It was guilt. Because Max had been trying to warn me for weeks, maybe longer, and I hadn't listened. All those moments I'd been irritated, brushing him off, telling him to give me space. He hadn't been clingy. He'd been desperate. Desperate to keep me alive. I spent the next few days watching him the way he had watched me. Carefully. Quietly. Studying every shift in his ears, every glance toward the corners of the room. But now, he was different. He relaxed again. Slept deeper. Ate better. Even started to play with his toys, something I hadn't seen him do in months. The worry in his eyes had been replaced with something softer, a piece I hadn't realized was missing until it returned. He didn't crawl on top of me anymore. He didn't need to. But I hadn't forgotten what it meant. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the old manila folder from the shelter, the one with Max's limited paperwork. Most of it was blank or generic, no microchip. No known breed. Approximate age, 5 years. There were no details about where he'd come from, no medical records, no notes about prior owners. But there was something else. A small card slipped behind the intake form. I hadn't noticed it before. It read. Name previously used, Hunter, trained for emotional response, rehomed after handler illness. My breath caught. Max hadn't just been someone's pet. He had been trained. I called the shelter the next morning. I adopted Max about 8 months ago, I told the receptionist. There was a note in his file that said he was previously called Hunter and trained for emotional response. Do you have any idea what that means? There was a pause. Then she said, hold on. Let me pull up his profile. I waited in silence, Max curled at my feet. When she returned, her voice was softer. Yes. I see the note. Hunter was originally a therapy dog. He worked with a woman who had epilepsy and chronic anxiety. Apparently, he was trained to detect early warning signs, behavioral changes, heart rate shifts, even scent markers. I felt chills creep down my spine. So he could sense when something was wrong? Yes. We didn't know the full details, the woman passed away before we received him. But we do know he was considered a high-alert companion. And he ended up in the shelter? I asked, shocked. She hesitated. He was found tied to a porch. No tags. No ID. We assumed it was someone trying to help, but unwilling to take him in long term. I looked down at Max. He was watching me again. Eyes steady. Gentle. I hung up the phone and sat there in silence. Suddenly everything made sense. His alertness. His obsession with doors. The way he crawled on top of me in the night, not out of confusion, but because he thought I wouldn't wake up. Because maybe, once before, someone he loved hadn't. That night, I lay in bed with Max beside me and whispered into the dark. "I'm so sorry." He licked my hand once. Then curled against me like he always did. But this time I held him close. Not because I needed protection. But because I needed to say thank you. The next morning, I pulled out my laptop and began writing. I typed for hours, about the gas leak, the signs I ignored, Max's behavior, the timing, the vet's words, the shelter's note. I described waking up to the weight of him on my chest, the warning in his eyes, the moment he stood between me and death without making a sound. By afternoon, it had become a full article. I titled it, "The Dog That Saved My Life While I Was Still Asleep." I posted it online, not expecting much. But within days, the messages came flooding in. People who had similar stories. Dogs that woke them during heart attacks. Dogs that alerted them to seizures. Dogs that barked at cancerous moles or pulled them away from collapsing buildings. Dogs that saved lives, again and again, in silence, just like Max. One comment stood out. A woman wrote, "They carry more than fur. They carry the memory of the ones they couldn't save." It stuck with me for days. Because maybe Max wasn't just protecting me. Maybe he was making up for the time he couldn't. I started painting again. It had been years. The first canvas I filled was a portrait of Max, standing over me in bed, alert, glowing with the light of early dawn. His eyes watching. His chest rising steady. His body firm with purpose. I hung it in the hallway near the front door. Every time I pass it, I remember that night. Not the fear. But the feeling. Of knowing that something, someone, was watching over me when I couldn't protect myself. Some nights, I still wake up suddenly. A leftover response from the weeks I spent dizzy and drained and drifting. But now, when I open my eyes, Max is always there. Not on my chest. Not standing guard. Just beside me. Breathing softly. Sleeping deeply. Safe. He doesn't need to crawl on top of me anymore. Because now, I listen. Now, I trust him. And most importantly, now, I know. It was strange how everything in my life shifted after the gas leak, and not just in the physical sense. Yes, the house was safer now. The new pipes were sealed, vents cleaned, detectors installed in every room. The air smelled fresher. The rooms felt brighter. My body felt stronger. But something deeper had changed. Max and I were no longer just pet and owner. We were something else now. He wasn't just a rescue dog anymore. He was my guardian. My second heartbeat. My mirror. And I had begun to see the world through his eyes. The article I'd posted about him had gone viral. I hadn't meant for it to. I'd written it to process everything, for myself, for Max, maybe for the few dozen friends who followed my blog. But now it had been shared thousands of sh in the open meadow near the ridge. I stood in the center of the grass, arms out, sunlight pouring down on my face, and Max ran circles around me like he was laughing in his own way. It felt like healing. It felt like joy. We stopped at a bench overlooking the lake. Max rested his head on my knee. I stroked his fur and thought about all the things I'd never be able to repay. "Do you remember her?" I asked quietly. He looked up. "The person before me. Your handler." It was a question without expectation. But his eyes shifted slightly. As if something inside him stirred. You couldn't save her, I whispered. But you saved me. His ears twitched. And I realized something. Maybe he wasn't just protecting me. Maybe I was helping him heal, too. That evening, I dug back into old emails and started contacting therapy dog organizations. I wanted to find out who Max, or Hunter, really was. It wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about honoring the story I had stepped into without knowing it. 3 days later, I received a reply from a woman named Carol, who ran a therapy dog program in the next state. Yes, she wrote. I recognize him. He was part of our program 4 years ago. Went by Hunter back then. Assigned to a woman named Elise M. for seizure monitoring and emotional support. My hands trembled as I read the next line. Elise passed away suddenly in her sleep. We don't know the full cause. Her family didn't want an autopsy. We believe it may have been a silent heart event. When the EMTs arrived, Hunter was found lying on top of her. He'd triggered her medical alert, but no one responded in time. I stopped breathing. Max, Hunter, had been through this before. I stepped outside with the printout and sat on the porch. Max followed, as always. I sat on the top step. He lay beside me. I didn't speak. I just handed him the page and let the paper flutter in the breeze, even though I knew he couldn't read it. You did everything right, I said softly. And I'm so sorry nobody listened. His body relaxed against mine. And for the first time, I felt a piece of weight I hadn't even noticed, his weight, finally lift. That night, I left the bedroom door open again. Max didn't crawl on top of me. He didn't need to. Instead, he curled up at the foot of the bed, watching the hallway, but in a new way, calm, not anxious. Present, not panicked. I slept through the night. Dreamless. Peaceful. Alive. In the morning, I made a decision. We weren't just going to survive anymore. We were going to live. I started taking Max with me everywhere. Coffee shops with pet-friendly patios. Garden centers. Art fairs. Libraries. People recognized him from the article. Strangers stopped us to say thank you. Some cried. Some bent down to whisper to him, as if he were a priest or a saint in fur. He didn't react much. Just let them touch his head, look into his eyes. He seemed to understand the role he played. Not just for me, but for them. I started painting again, too. Not just one canvas, but many. A whole series called The Silent Ones, portraits of animals who'd done extraordinary things without ever saying a word. Max was in every single one. Sometimes clearly. Sometimes just a shape in the shadows. But always present. Always watching. A small gallery in town offered to host the exhibit. The night of the opening, I walked in holding Max's leash, my palms sweating with nerves. But as people wandered through the space, pointing at brushstrokes and wiping away tears, I realized. This wasn't about art. It was about telling the story Max couldn't. It was about showing the world what he'd done for me. And maybe, in some quiet way, what I'd done for him. Later, as the crowd thinned out and soft jazz played through the speakers, a little girl walked up to Max and knelt down. She had a scar above her eye and a pink cast on her arm. She whispered something to him. I didn't hear the words. But Max laid down gently and placed his paw over hers. And the little girl smiled. When we got home that night, I pulled out the original collar he came with, faded, frayed, cracked with time. And I replaced the tag. Not with Max. But with Max Hunter, my protector. My healer. My friend. We sat on the couch together as the sun dipped behind the trees. He rested his head on my shoulder, heavy and warm. I don't know how much time we have, I whispered. But I promise you, I'll spend every second of it being someone worth saving. His tail thumped once. Then again. He no longer watched the hallway like he expected something to come. He watched it like it wouldn't dare. Natürlich, hier ist das große Finale. I didn't plan to tell the story again. Not after the article, not after the exhibit, not after the interviews and the thank you cards and the strangers who sent us drawings and poems and dog treats in the mail. I thought I'd already said everything that mattered. But then I woke up one morning, nearly a year to the day since that first night, with Max lying beside me, one paw draped gently over my arm. Not on my chest this time. Just touching. A small, steady reminder. And I knew. The story wasn't over. Not until I said it out loud. One more time. The way it truly began. While I was still asleep. They say dogs have a sixth sense. They say they feel storms before they roll in, earthquakes before the ground shakes, sickness before symptoms show. But what no one ever told me was this: sometimes, they feel you. Not just your heartbeat, not just your scent, but your intention, your loss. Your surrender, the exact moment your body stops fighting. I know that now, because I lived it. Or maybe, because Max refused to let me die. That morning, the one that started it all, I'd been in a fog for weeks. I didn't realize I was being poisoned. Not consciously. I thought I was just tired. Just stressed. Just, not myself. But Max had known. He'd smelled it in the air. In my sweat. In my breath. And when I slipped too deep into that invisible sleep, he didn't bark. Didn't panic. He climbed on top of me. Laid his weight across my chest. And held me to the world. I think about that moment more than I should, not just what it felt like, his warmth, the pressure, the way I opened my eyes to find him staring right into me, but what it meant. He didn't know what carbon monoxide was. He couldn't read gas levels or call 911. But he knew I was slipping. And he decided I wasn't going anywhere. Sometimes I wonder if he remembered the first time, the one I only heard about secondhand. The woman before me, Elise, how she died in her sleep. How Max triggered her alert button. How no one answered in time. Was that why he'd been so afraid? Was that why he watched me so closely? Blocked doors? Pinned me down with his silent weight? Was he remembering the night he couldn't save her, and swearing he wouldn't fail again? We never talk about what animals carry. Not really. We call them pets. Companions. Good boys. But some of them are witnesses. To our worst days. Our private pain. Our slow undoing. They see what we hide from others, they stay when the world turns away, and sometimes, they hold us in place when even gravity lets go. The night after the gallery closed its final exhibit, Max did something he hadn't done in months. He crawled on top of me. It was gentle, not panicked. A slow, almost ceremonial movement. He pressed his body along mine and rested his chin on my shoulder, heart to heart. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes closed, arms around him. I'm okay now, I whispered. His breath warmed my cheek. But he didn't move. Not for a long time. In the morning, I found a letter tucked under the door. It had no return address. Inside was a single line, handwritten in perfect cursive. The ones who watch us while we sleep, they are the ones who remember what the rest of the world forgets. And no signature. I never found out who sent it, but I didn't need to. Because it felt like truth. Because it was truth. Max remembered. And I was learning to remember too. Weeks passed. The story faded from headlines. The world moved on. But I didn't stop telling people about what happened. Not just the facts, the leak, the symptoms, the repair, but the moment. The moment I woke up to Max on top of me. The moment I realized I was being held in place by a creature who had no words, only instinct, only love. Because that's the thing about animals like Max. They don't love you the way people do. They love you with purpose. With presence. With the kind of loyalty that doesn't need explanation. Max is older now. His muzzle's gone a little gray. His steps are slower on cold mornings. His naps are longer, deeper. Sometimes, when I call his name, he needs a few extra seconds to lift his head. But his eyes? Still the same. Still watching. Still listening. Still ready. Some nights, I still dream of him climbing on top of me, but it's not frightening anymore. It's comforting. Familiar. It's a memory that lives in my bones. A weight that once saved my life. I've started volunteering at the local rescue shelter, helping people meet the dogs they didn't know they were looking for, telling the story when the time feels right. And every time I see someone glance at a quiet, older dog in the back of the pen, the one not barking, not jumping, just watching, I want to whisper. That one sees everything, that one has held someone together before, that one will hold you too, if you let them. Last month, I painted Max again. This time not on the bed, not on a trail, not in a gallery. But in that moment, that first moment. At 4:27 a.m. My body still. My face pale, his standing over me, eyes full of urgency, and light behind him, dawn breaking through the window. The piece is titled simply, "While I was still asleep." It's not for sale. It hangs above my bed. A reminder of the moment everything changed. A reminder of the dog who chose to fight for me when I couldn't fight for myself. I know, one day, Max will leave me. It's the only part of the story I dread, the only weight I don't know how to carry. But I also know this. Whatever comes after, whatever silence, whatever grief, I will not be alone. Because his presence will never fully leave this house. Because his memory is in the air I breathed, I and the floor he once guarded, I and the warmth I now wake up to every morning. Because he stayed when I was slipping, when I was unaware, when I was still asleep. And when the time comes, when he is the one closing his eyes, I will be there. Not moving, not blinking, not letting go. Because now I understand what he did for me. And I will do the same for him.